welcome to the latest KRAD COVID readings. I'm Keith R.A. DeCandido, and I'm here to read you my stuff. This is the final installment of Achtung, Monster! Or as we say in English, Here There Be Monsters, which is part of the Starfleet Corps of Engineers series, and also part of the Gateways crossover, kind of an epilogue to that bet that we did back in 2001. This is the final portion. I'm going to warn you right now, there are some very long, complicated names. Because we're in this final bit, we're going to find out the names of the creatures, which are extremely long and hard to pronounce. When I wrote this in 2001, I figured, hey, it's written down, what the hell? Never imagining that 20 years after I wrote it, I would have to actually pronounce the words on a YouTube video. I mostly didn't predict that because YouTube didn't exist in 2001. But I'm going to give it my best shot, but I'm going to warn you ahead of time that it's going to be entertaining. Anyway, here we go. Chapter 9. Domenica Corsi stared at Fabian Stevens as he smacked his tricorder on the side and wondered why she had assigned herself to him. She'd mostly been avoiding Stevens since Empok Nor. It was better that way. Lenz knew about their tryst, but she wouldn't say anything, and miraculously the gossip hadn't seemed to spread beyond some salacious remarks made by Hawkins and Drew. Stevens himself hadn't said a word. He'd done just as she requested, treated it as a one-time thing with no strings. So why did she choose to spend all this time alone with him now? She wasn't sure. It wasn't like she took advantage of the time at all, since they only had duty-related conversation while they tried to track down one of the extra-dimensional things and encase it in one of Blue's force fields. This one had already destroyed one person's farm. The owner, a cranky old Tellarite named Malk, had carried on for several minutes on the subject, and had moved on to another farm down the road. At present, they were about 100 meters away from that house, and getting closer. Unfortunately, that duonetic field that the Andrasi inflicted on Maeglin was now interfering with the tricorder, so they'd lost their mark. "Ah!" Stevens said suddenly. "What?" He held up the tricorder and smiled. "We have achieved tricorder, and our green monster is right up this way." As he moved forward, Corsi held up the phaser with her right hand, the remote control in her force field encased left. "I just want to say," she said, then cut herself off. Stevens, still looking at the tricorder, said, "What?" "I wanted to thank you." Now Stevens did look. He seemed confused. "For what?" "For not saying anything about what happened last month." "You asked me not to," Stevens said with a shrug. "Assuming you really meant it, what else was I supposed to do? You asked me not to tell anyone, and I didn't. You also indicated that it wasn't the beginning of anything, so I didn't expect it to be." Corsi frowned. "What do you mean, assuming you really meant it?" Stevens stopped and turned to look at her. "Did you really mean it?" "Of course," she said angrily. Again, he shrugged. "And it's no big deal. I'm not going to betray a confidence. It was what it was, and we've moved on." He peered back down at the tricorder. "It's still in the same spot. Let's go." Shaking her head, Corsi said, "Right, of course." Focus on duty, she thought. He's right, we've moved on. So why the hell do I keep harping on it? They soon came within sight of a large structure that was dwarfed by the much larger green bipedal creature standing over it, and bleeding a yellow ichor from its side. It was also holding a Tellarite in its massive green claw. Corsi noticed some kind of primitive projectile weapon on the ground near the creature. Indicating the tableau with her head, Corsi said, "My guess is that our friend there shot the big guy with that weapon on the ground." Stevens nodded, and the big guy took umbrage. "He ain't seen umbrage yet," Corsi said as she raised her phaser. She may not have had the best handle on her feelings, but now she was in her element. "Go, Mr. Corsi." "A little busy, Commander. One of our new playmates is about to squeeze the life out of a Tellarite." "Don't shoot it, Domenica. That's an order." "What?" Then came the voice of Diego Feliciano, the Da Vinci's transporter chief. "I'm locked onto their position, Commander." "Energize." Moments later, Drew, Gomez, and Falwell materialized a meter to Corsi's right. Before the transporter effect had even died down, Gomez was holding up one hand. "Don't fire, Commander. There's more to this than we thought." Falwell started to move closer to the creature, and then started bellowing at it and gesticulating madly. "What the hell?" Gomez added, "You and Drew keep your phasers ready and put them on heavy stun. If there's any kind of move against the Tellarite or Bart, go ahead and fire, but only then. Understood?" Corsi let out a breath between her teeth. "You're the boss." Falwell continued his bizarre diatribe. After a minute, the creature put the Tellarite down. "It's okay, sir," Falwell said to the Tellarite, who ran for his weapon. "Please, Aphrodaspriotonieric didn't mean you any harm. He's just confused." "That Grabthar tried to kill me!" With an anger that Corsi wouldn't have expected from the usually easygoing linguist, Falwell asked, "Was that before or after you shot him?" "I was defending my home!" And the Tellarite went to pick up his weapon. Corsi nodded to Drew, and they both aimed their phasers at the Tellarite. "Touch it, and you won't get the chance to pick it up." Ignoring them, the Tellarite bent over. The moment his fingers touched the weapon, Corsi and Drew both fired. The Tellarite fell over, stunned. Stevens looked at Falwell. "What goes on here, Bart? Is Fred here a good guy after all?" "And what about the farm he trashed?" Corsi asked. She didn't see any good reason to let the Tellarite shoot the creature again, but she wasn't completely ready to trust this Fred yet. "Back where he comes from, he's a prisoner." "What?" Corsi raised her weapon and aimed it at Fred. "A political prisoner," Falwell said quickly, holding up his hands. "He and the others we captured were rounded up by someone called Grugier Poictiquil. He's like that furry one we still haven't tracked down yet." Corsi noticed that every use of a proper name for one of these creatures was accompanied by some kind of weird gesture. "He apparently rounded everyone up who wasn't like him and put them in prisons. When the gateway opened, these 6 were sent to test it out. The feeling was they were prisoners, they were expendable, so they'd send them in first. Then the gateway shut down and they were stuck. The problem was nobody could talk to them, and all their attempts at communication failed, obviously, since we couldn't talk to them either. They're sorry for the destruction they caused, but they were lost and confused. They want to make amends." "And you believe them?" Corsi asked, shocked at Falwell's naivete. "Yes, because they have no reason to lie, and because they could have broken out of the force fields any time they wanted." Even Gomez was surprised at that. "What?" "Yes, Commander, they can. We can even prove it now. Fabe?" Falwell held out his hands. Smiling, Stevens tossed the force field generator, and Falwell caught it. He put it on the ground and said several things while gesticulating some more to Fred, then turned on the force field. Moments later, Fred literally walked through the force field. Corsi felt her jaw drop. "How in the hell did he do that?" "They all can," Falwell said. "But they realized what was going on when they were being rounded up, and they decided that it would be better if they bided their time until they could communicate properly. Until we started corralling them, they didn't even realize they'd done anything wrong." Gomez nodded. "Hopefully we can defuse this and figure out what to do, without all the property damage." Stevens grinned. "That'll depend on whether or not the Maeglin are all as trigger-happy as Farmer Brown here." Returning the grin, Gomez said, "Governor Tack is more reasonable, I'm sure." "He'd almost have to be," Drew muttered. Corsi, however, noticed that Falwell was still having a conversation with Fred. Commander?" he said, turning back to Gomez. "Yes?" "We've got a bit of a problem." "What?" "You know that last prisoner left, the one we haven't caught, is of the same race as the one that's in power in their home dimension?" Gomez closed her eyes. "I just know I'm not going to like this." "You're not. The 5 we've got were all political prisoners. The other one, his name is Natwa Poikerdatchaquab, is a criminal, a psychopath." Corsi let out a very loud curse. "Blue to Gomez. Commander, the last creature has broken through the force field, and phaser fire is having no effect. Repeat, no effect. Not even on the highest... Oof!" Gomez tapped her comm badge. "Gomez to Feliciano. Diego, lock onto Blue and Lipinski. Get them out of there, now." 1 second later, Feliciano said, Got him, Commander. Ay, madre. Feliciano to sickbay. Medical emergency." "What's happening, Diego?" Gomez asked anxiously. "Both Blue and Lipinski are unconscious, Commander, and Lipinski's bleeding like crazy." "Damn it," Gomez said. "Commander," Falwell said, "Aphrodaspriotonieric says he can take care of Natwapwirldgatquab. Tell Fred we appreciate it, Bart," but Fred let out a wail and gesticulated like crazy. Of course, he had a feeling he was pretty emphatic about whatever point he was making. Falwell gave a quick reply to the creature, then said, "Commander, we can't stop Natwapwirldgatquab without his help. You heard Patty. Not only won't the force fields work, neither will the phasers." Gomez frowned. We'll stop them together. Corsi, set phasers on maximum. She tapped her comm badge. Gomez to Feliciano. 6 to beam to the location where you transported Blue and Lipinski. This next chapter is going to be even worse with the names, so I'm doing my best. Aphrodite knew that this was going to happen. He and the others had tried to reason with the creatures, tried communicating in every way they knew how. They hadn't even realized the harm they had done until Bart Falwell's people took the punitive action. True, it wasn't really effective, but Aphrodite and the others knew it was just best to bide their time. Bart Falwell justified that faith. But Natty Poitierab was another problem entirely. Aphrodite and the others just wanted to be free of Gudjar Parquil's tyranny. Nat Yipoitierquab thought, though, he wanted to kill things. As many things as possible. We're about to be transported, Bart Falwell explained. I don't understand. Like the gateway that brought you here, only not so big a jump. We can move from place to place. Suddenly, Aphrodite felt an odd tingling sensation. When it cleared up, he found himself in a different place. Surely, Bart Falwell's people could do wonders. Yes, Aphrodite decided he was going to like this place. Assuming, of course, that they could stop Nat Yipoitierquab. Aphrodite saw the killer just as he was slashing through one of the natives of this world. One of Bart Falwell's people cried out and fired her weapon at Nat Yipoitierquab. Unfortunately, it only served to anger him. Another of Bart Falwell's people made a noise, and then 2 of them fired their weapons for a more prolonged period. Natty Poitierquab's response was to lunge after them. Aphrodite feared for the lives of his new friends, not to mention the lives of his comrades. They had a chance to start over, make a new life, but if Natty Poitierquab kept up his killing ways, it might never happen. Aphrodite would not allow that. He ran toward Natty Poitierquab, saying to Bart Falwell as he ran, "Tell your people to stay back. Natty Poitierquab will kill them." "What are you going to do?" Bart Falwell asked. "What I must." At that, Natty Poitierquab laughed. "Do not be a fool, Aphrodite. I will kill you as easily as I killed that minuscule life form." He indicated the fallen male native of the world, who was presently being stood over by 2 females, one his own size, one considerably smaller. "I will not let you harm these people anymore. You'll have to stop me." "Oh, I plan to." Then Aphrodite slashed at Natty Poitierquab with his claws. The clash was an epic one. Aphrodite was stronger than Natty Poitierquab, but Natty Poitierquab was faster. He ducked under Aphrodite's attack and slashed with his own claws. Aphrodite blocked that and kicked at his foe, but he was able to avoid it. Aphrodite was not sure how long he struggled against Natty Poitierquab. The only thing he knew for sure was that he was losing ground. Gathering all his strength, Aphrodite managed to flip Natty Poitierquab over his head. But even as he crashed into the ground on a heap, Natty Poitierquab made a grab for one of the bits of flora that Bart Falwell called trees and ripped it from the ground. He swung it at Aphrodite, who was too fatigued from being shot and from the fight to dodge it. The impact collided with Aphrodite's head, and he too fell to the ground. He tried to force himself to get up, but Natty Poitierquab got to his feet first, still holding the tree. Before Aphrodite could react, Natty Poitierquab rammed the tree through his chest. Aphrodite had felt pain before, particularly during his interrogation at the hands of Gudjar Parquil's enforcers, but nothing like this. He could feel the life flowing out of him. Natty Poitierquab laughed. "You are such a fool. Now I will kill everyone on this planet. Perhaps everyone in this entire universe." Fury gripped Aphrodite. Bart Falwell and the others stood no chance. Natty Poitierquab had killed at least 1 person, possibly more. Aphrodite could not let this go on, no matter what the cost. He gripped the tree with his talons, his yellow claws digging into the plant's surface. Though pain racked his body, he yanked at it. Unfortunately, it didn't come out. Alfredus Potnierik almost blacked out from the wrenching agony, but somehow he forced himself to try again. Gripping the tree even tighter, he pulled it upward, and the plant was free. Of course, now the life was draining from his body at a great rate. He only had a short time to get to Natty Potnierik before he expired. But he would not die without taking that murderer down, too. Screaming a cry of anguish, he lunged after Natty Potnierik, who had moved on to try to kill Bart Falwell and his people. In fact, Natty Potnierik had one of them gripped in his talons, much as Alfredus Potnierik had held that native who shot him. She looked like she would be dead in a minute. "No more deaths!" Alfredus Potnierik cried with the last of his breath as he heaved the tree into Natty Potnierik's back. Then the world went dark as he fell to the ground once more. Chapter 11. "Report," Captain Gold said from the head of the observation lounge table. Sonia tried not to scratch the bandage on her side. She had only just gotten all of her movement back from when the monster Shi'ai ripped her torso open on Sarandar, and then she got hoisted by another monster. "Governor Tack has agreed to take in the remaining 4 creatures. They're called the Yucapicoriquai, Bart said helpfully, "and provide them with homes. One of them, in fact, specifically said he'd work on the farm owned by that man that Nat killed." "Nat?" Gold asked. "For simplicity's sake, we started referring to the green one as Fred and the furry one as Nat. Mr. Falwell's the only one who's been able to properly pronounce their full names." Gold chuckled. "Fine, go on." In any case, the governor was moved by the sacrifice that Fred made, basically giving his life to prevent more Maeglin from being killed. And he was especially appreciative of the fact that the Ukes were willing to be captured the way they were. "The only problem," Bart said, "is communication. The UT won't work with a language that integrates so much with a physical component. So, sir, I'd like to request permission to stay here for a while, to teach the Maeglin how to speak to the Yuquapicoriquai, and to teach them how to speak Tellarite." "Unfortunately, we can't stick around," Gold said. "It looks like all the gateways Mishigas has calmed down, and we're back on our usual duties, which means we'll have to pick up some mining equipment at Starbase 413 and then head to Beta Argola." He grinned. "But that's not something that'll require a linguist, I don't think. We'll muddle through without you for a few weeks, Falwell." "Thank you, sir," Bart said with a smile. "Is there any way to get these people home?" Gold asked Sonia. She shook her head. "They're not interested. They were prisoners, and with the gateway shut down, there's probably no way to get them back home, even if they wanted to go." Gold leaned back. "Well, if the Maeglin don't mind having them around, and if they don't mind being there." "Sir," Bart said, "Alfredus Potnierik, Fred, died so that the Yucapicoriquai could have a new home. I think we owe it to him to do everything to allow that, rather than waste our energy trying to open a dimensional portal for no good reason." "Fair enough," Gold said with a chuckle. "How are we doing on the casualty front?" "Only one Maeglin died, the one Nat killed. His wife and little girl are a bit bruised. The girl, her name is Lynn, was pretty traumatized, but her mother seemed to think she'll be all right. Beyond that, the only real damage on planet was structural, and even with the duonetic field, that's fixable." "What about our people?" Sonia folded her hands in front of her on the table. "Lipinski and Blue will both be okay. Lipinski's out of action for at least a week. She got torn up pretty bad by Nat." Grinning wryly while gingerly patting her side, she added, "I know how she feels, believe me. Patty only needs a day or 2, though." "What about Duffy?" "He'll be fine. He'll be back on duty next shift." "He better not think he's off the hook for that lame-brained stunt," she thought. "All right, get some sleep, Commander. And Falwell?" "Sir?" "Good luck," he said with a smile. "And try not to get too attached to Maeglin. We still need you here." Chuckling as he got up, Bart said, "Don't worry, sir. Farm life isn't really for me." "Bridge to Gold." "Go ahead," Gold said as Bart left. "Message from the Malinche, sir. They'll be here in 30 minutes, and they'll be ready to take charge of the situation." Gold looked at Sonia. Sonia looked at Gold. They both laughed for several seconds. "Sir?" "Nothing, McAllen. Tell them to take their time." And that is the end of Here There Be Monsters. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you've enjoyed that. Please, as usual, check me out online, DeCandido.net, DeCandido.wordpress.com, and Patreon.com/KRAD. Next week, we will be picking up with my next Starfleet Corps of Engineers story, which is called War Stories. This is actually a series of flashbacks to what the various members of the crew were doing during the Dominion War, which took up the last 2 seasons of Deep Space Nine. These stories take place in the year following the Dominion War, so concurrent with the 6th season of Star Trek Voyager and after the final season of Deep Space Nine. The flashback thing will include what the Da Vinci was doing in one of the stories, as well as what Gomez was doing when she was chief engineer of the Sentinel. Falwell was doing cryptography work on behalf of the Federation, and Dr. Lenz was serving on the USS Lexington. Part of her backstory that we gave there was that she served on the Lexington during a particularly brutal battle. Mentions of it were already in Hard Crash, and which was by Christy Golden, and Ambush by, not Ambush, one of the other ones. Anyway, that's been a big part of Lenz's backstory, as we established in the Corps of Engineers series, and War Stories flashes back to the details of that. Anyway, that starts next week. That'll go throughout June and July. Again, thank you for watching, and please, please, stay safe.